Presto Stovetop pressure canners are ideal for easy, confident home canning. They meet USDA home canning guidelines for safely processing vegetables, meats, poultry, and other low-acid foods. They also double as boiling water canners. Both methods use recipes with standard processing times and temperatures as defined by the USDA. This step-by-step video guide will demonstrate the pressure canning method. Presto Stovetop pressure canners are available in two sizes, 16 and 23-quart liquid capacities, as well as a model for use on induction ranges. The 23-quart model will be used in this video. Except for jar capacity, they function the same. Before using it for the first time, start with the Getting Acquainted section of the instruction manual for directions on cleaning and assembling your canner. Now, turn to the How to Pressure Can Food section of the instruction manual. Always make sure the canner is in proper working order. Be sure the air vent cover lock pieces are firmly screwed together with the pin portion on the top side of the cover and the cup portion on the underside. Check the vent pipe by holding the cover up to the light and looking through the vent pipe to make sure it is clear. The sealing ring and overpressure plug should be pliable and in good condition. Make sure they are properly seated in the cover. The dial gauge should be firmly fastened and checked for accuracy every year. The instruction manual also includes specific directions for pressure canning a wide variety of foods, including fruits, tomatoes, vegetables, meat, fish, even soups and stocks. Gather the canning supplies you'll need. For information on jars, lids, and bands, refer to Canning Basics in the instruction manual and online at gopresto.com. Always use a research-tested recipe and never alter the ingredient proportions. Select fresh, firm produce and wash and prepare as directed in the recipe. Today, we're using the recipe for pressure canning green beans using the raw pack method in quart jars. The green beans can be left whole or cut into 1-inch pieces. Wash and rinse the mason jars, lids, and bands. Use only jars and bands that are in perfect condition. Examine the jars for nicks or cracks. Inspect bands for rust or dents. Always use new lids and prepare as directed by the manufacturer. Place the canner on a gas or electric range burner that closely matches the 8 to 9-inch diameter of the canner bottom. Do not use an outdoor LP gas burner or a gas range over 12,000 BTUs. If using on a smooth top range, check for weight restrictions because a filled canner can weigh over 50 pounds. Place the canning rack in the canner to prevent jar breakage and add 3 quarts of water. 3 quarts are needed no matter how many jars are being canned. Jars should be kept hot until ready to use. This can be done in a dishwasher or in the canner. To heat the jars, fill them half full with water and place them on the rack in the canner. Heat the water in the canner and maintain the temperature at almost simmering. Then place the cover on the canner by aligning the V-mark on the cover with the inverted V-mark on the body handle. The body and cover handles will not be aligned for this step. Allow the jars to warm for at least 10 minutes. To complete the preparations, heat a pot of water to boiling. It will be needed when packing the jars. Remove the cover from the canner. Lift out 1 jar at a time and discard the water from the jar. Immediately fill the jar with green beans. For the raw pack method, pack the beans tightly in the hot jar, leaving 1-inch headspace. Add 1 teaspoon canning salt to the jar, if desired, and add boiling water, again leaving 1-inch headspace as directed in the canning recipe. It is important to release trapped air bubbles in the jar, which can also affect headspace. All recipes will indicate the amount of headspace necessary for the food being canned. Headspace is the airspace between the top of the food and liquid and the lid. Wipe any food particles and liquid from the jar rim. Then position a flat lid. Using your fingertips, screw the band onto the jar evenly and firmly, fingertip tight. Do not over-tighten, as air must release from the jars during processing and cooling. Using the jar lifter, Place the filled jar straight down onto the canning rack. Repeat the process, filling one jar at a time until all jars are in the canner. Place the cover on the canner, aligning the V mark on the cover with the inverted V mark on the body handle. This time, press down on the cover handles and rotate clockwise until the cover handles are above the body handles. The regulator should not be on the cover during the venting phase. Heat the canner using a relatively high setting until a steady flow of steam can be seen, heard, or felt coming from the vent pipe. The venting phase begins at this point. Reduce the heat as necessary to maintain a steady but gentle to moderate flow of steam. Allow the canner to vent for 10 minutes. Venting is required when pressure canning because air that is inside the closed canner must be replaced with a pure steam environment that is free of air pockets. When the 10-minute venting time is done, place the pressure regulator on the vent pipe. Adjust the heat to a relatively high setting and heat the canner. If the air vent cover lock did not lift during venting, air and steam will continue to release until it lifts and locks the cover. This is a visual indicator of pressure inside the canner. As the pressure builds, the pointer on the gauge will begin to move up. Adjust the heat so the canner comes up to pressure slowly. When the pressure is 1 or 2 pounds below the pressure stated in the recipe, reduce the heat slightly to make it easier to maintain the targeted pressure. Continue heating until the dial gauge registers the pressure stated in the recipe. Green beans in quart jars are processed at 11 pounds pressure for 25 minutes. However, when canning at higher altitudes, refer to the altitude adjustment chart in the instruction manual to determine the correct processing pressure for the food being canned. When the proper pressure is reached, the processing time begins. Closely monitor the canner and adjust the heat as necessary to maintain the correct pressure or slightly above, but never below. If it does fall below, you must bring the canner back up to the proper pressure and start the processing time from the beginning. At the end of the processing time, turn the burner off and remove the canner from the heat source. If the canner is too heavy to move easily, leave it in place. That is better than taking a chance that the jars may tilt or tip over. Let the pressure drop of its own accord. Do not attempt to speed the cooling process. Doing so could cause jar breakage and liquid loss from the jars. Pressure is completely reduced when the air vent cover lock drops and no steam escapes when the pressure regulator is lifted. Do not use the dial gauge as an indicator for when pressure is completely reduced. If no steam escapes, remove the regulator from the vent pipe and let the canner cool for another 10 minutes. When cooling is complete, remove the cover by turning it counterclockwise and lift it toward you to keep steam away from you. Using a jar lifter, carefully remove the jars by lifting them straight up and place them upright on a towel. Do not retighten the bands. Allow the jars to cool naturally for a minimum of 12 hours, but no more than 24 hours before testing to see if a vacuum seal has formed. To check the seals, press down on the lid. It should be concave and not flex up and down when pressed. If a jar fails to seal, it will audibly flex up and down. Refer to Troubleshooting in the instruction manual for a remedy. You now have 7 quarts of pressure-canned green beans preserved using the Presto pressure canner. Be sure to read the instruction manual and recipe carefully before each use. More canning information is available at gopresto.com. For a step-by-step video guide of the boiling water canning method using the Presto pressure canner, watch the companion video. Available in 16-quart and 23-quart models, as well as a model for use on induction ranges.